Chapter 12. Date of Destiny, Forget-Me-Nots. Many a ride later, the sparkling orange sun had begun to set in the sky, leaving behind a fantastic light show in the form of a dusk sunset. Much of the park's crowd had begun to stratify and depart, but the four kids were as energetic as ever. "I can't believe you screamed the whole time, John!" Jade held her stomach as she burst with laughter as the group walked together. "Hey, the carousel's a very intense ride." The gang had, in fact, reunited after the haunted house incident, and surprisingly not much was said in regards to the happy little endeavor, greatly pleasing John and Rose, who took it as the obvious sign that it had been a success. After that, they had decided to kick it down a notch in regards to their schemes for the rest of the day, seeing as how well things were going. They had reached the next ride, which had a sizable line even as the time grew late. Jade looked up at the sign, which read "The Red Miles" in the most intimidating way a series of 11 letters could possibly be written. Just past the sign was the ride itself, so tall and steep that she had to crane her head all the way back and glare up at it and its unforgiving loops, its horrifying mountain-esque drops, and the deterrent twists and turns. It must have traveled at the speed of light, 181 miles a second of the harshest thrashing and shaking the world had ever seen. Why, surely the psychological limitations of the person's being would be tested to the max. This thing wasn't a piece of machinery. It was an ungodly beast. Jade stood frozen, quaking in her shoes. The blood drained from her face and her stomach performed backflips. Dave picked up on her reaction immediately. They took their place in the queue line. "Ooh, you can't escape the Red Miles," John echoed in an eerie voice with a rather spooky expression as Rose laughed. Jade broke into a silent panic. No one else seemed to have given a second thought about getting on this. Rose and John talked, snarking and wisecracking back and forth at each other with nary a care in the world. Dave seemed fine too as he listened in on their conversations, making a light remark here and there, and unbeknownst to her, peering over from behind his shades. And they had only ridden one coaster that day, and it was barely qualifying as a roller coaster, more like a really fast golf cart on rails. No, she could not do this. They inched forward in line. "Wow, this line is moving remarkably fast," Rose noted. "We'll be the next ones on at this rate." Jade felt the contents of her stomach slosh together, and her heart fell as fast as the Red Miles itself. "Just say it, stupid!" Her thoughts were even louder than the screams on those on board the ride. "Just tell him you don't want to go! You can't go!" The fear within had pooled into her eyes, irises ablaze with tremulous terror. This is peer pressure at its finest, wasn't it? The clicks of the unlocking harnesses released the old passengers, releasing the victims from its grasp and welcoming new ones. No sound could have inspired more horror than that for Jade. It would be embarrassing to back out, right? John would call her a chicken. She wouldn't look cool in front of Dave at all. Rose would probably try to convince her that it would be fine. It'd be over soon enough. Come on now, Jade. The ducts of her eyes began to feel wet and heavy. "Don't you dare cry, Jade Harley. Come on, back out!" All the while she was lost in a downward mental abyss, the blonde boy watched with great concern out of the corners of his eyes. He had already seen one scared Jade today, and as far as he was concerned, that was enough for a lifetime. Besides, the way she was scared in the haunted house mansion was more like a mild irritation and general feeling of being creeped out. This right here was pure trepidation. She was so painfully, obviously terrified, and yet she hadn't said a single word. He wondered why in the world she remained silent. Probably because she was so dang determined to keep up with all her friends, prove them she was fine, conquer fears and all that jazz. "I'm out." They all turned to look at him. "What, are you chicken?" John began the ever-so-predictable teasing dialogue. "Yeah, sure, whatever. Come on, Jade, let's ditch these nerds." He slunk under the metal bars, keeping the line in order, and Jade followed, climbing over them, smiling from ear to ear. John and Rose watched them walk away together, heading off to who knows where. "You know, they are pretty cute together," John admitted as they were corralled into the seats. "Sure," Rose agreed. "Almost as cute together as two other weirdos I know." The restraining harnesses came down over them and snapped in place. "Wait, what?" You know, Dave was onto something. The Red Miles is the scariest ride here." "Rose, what were you saying earlier?" The ride began rolling forward, an incline so steep it was almost straight. "John, we are so stupid for riding on this. Oh my gosh." They reached the top. "But Rose, what were you?" And the screams were so loud you can hear them a million miles away. They walked together, bathed in the soft, fading light of the sunset. "Thanks for that, back there." Jade rubbed the back of her head bashfully, glaring down at her shoes. "No worries, it's nothing. They'll probably wet themselves anyway. Strike that, John probably already peed his pants on the carousel." The two laughed. "You know, you always seem to swoop in and save me at the most opportune moments." "Huh?" "Whether it's for my lack of glasses, or haunted houses, or peer pressure, you always come through. You're just my knight in shining armor, I guess." She smiled sheepishly. A pair of ruby-red eyes grew wide, concealed behind shades, and the only thing redder than those were his cheekbones. Jade stood awkwardly in the little silent moment, regretting saying something so embarrassing and stupid. Classic Jade moment. So, she exclaimed, trying desperately to clear the air, I'll make it up to you. She pointed over to the glowing light of an open snack kiosk with great excitement. Let's get some junk food. It'll be my treat. And zipping her pants pocket, she took out a few dollars. What do you want? Nah, it's cool. I don't need anything. Tell me. No way, Jade. I can't let you buy me food. It's gonna happen whether you like it or not, so you might as well tell me what you want before I get you something nasty. He sighed, a telltale sign of defeat. You're not gonna give up, are you? She simply smiled in response. Chocolate ice cream. He folded his arms across his chest in frustration. Hi, she greeted the worker lady. I want 1 chocolate ice cream cone and 1 pink cotton candy. Jade slapped the money on the counter in return for the food. The pair found themselves a little bench. Here you go. I didn't know you liked chocolate ice cream. Yeah, thanks. Jade shoved the sugary sweet pink delicacy into her mouth, wondering why the heck Dave was acting so darn weird today. He would randomly spout out the most random vocabulary in conversation, such as the great boondoggling incident, and bring up the strangest conversation topics. He wasn't always like this, was he? Why would he act like this? Did she smell sweaty? She wished nobody was around so she could sniff her armpits. She probably smelled like dog or something. She peered over the top of her enormous cotton candy to steal a peek at Dave. She'd never seen anybody eat ice cream so cutely. He took little licks around the edges, combating the melty drips with his tongue barely leaving his mouth. She continued to devour her snack at a frighteningly fast pace. The velocity. The terminal velocity of the red miles. I wonder how much it is. And here we go again. I didn't know you were so into physics, Dave. Yes, that's me, Mr. Science himself. Chemistry and all that crap just blows me away. Guess you could say I really dropped the base. Jade laughed so hard that the cotton candy in her mouth almost flew right out. That was a Dave she knew and loved, not this wacko sciencey charade thing he'd been trying to pull today. Several bad puns and 2 stomachs full of sugar later, their time in the park had almost set. This has been an amazing day. Has been? Who says it's over? But, come on, we've got time for one last ride, don't we? Well, if you think we have the time, I'm all for spontaneity. Although, shouldn't we find John and Rose first? No, Dave retorted a little too enthusiastically. I mean, they're probably barfing their guts up right now. Anyway, what do you want to ride? She giggled. Hey, you're the one who brought it up. But if it's my choice... there. She pointed to the one thing Dave was fervently hoping she would not pick. The Skybreaker. It might not have been classified as a thrill ride, but you propel yourself up 350 feet in the air on a giant swing and say it's not a thrilling experience. Especially since being slung around up in the atmosphere with bugs and wind and who knows what did not exactly sound like a romantic experience, especially when you weren't particularly fond of heights. After all, this was supposed to be his big moment, what John had trained him for. This was it, and he'd be getting an earful from the meddling matchmakers if he did not live up to expectations. He took a gulp and wiped his sweaty palms in his jeans. Skybreaker? Cool, let's go. The seats were, rather to his advantage, in pairs. You'd be strapped up with a partner. The ride's operator instructed that any loose articles to be stored in the little cubby holes. Being the highest ride in the park and people generally being stupid, incidents of objects being dropped and thrown had called for more secure safety measures, including the removal of glasses. Go figure. Dave sighed and reluctantly removed his shades, a heinous act he would have never performed if it hadn't been for the fact that it was Jade, after all, and that it was dark out. He set them in a cubbyhole right next to Jade's glasses. Wait, where were Jade's glasses? She stood with furrowed brows, an ambivalent look plastered on her face. Jade, everything okay? Oh, yeah, sorry, I guess it's just what? She gave a little displeased frown. Well, I just feel really stupid looking without my glasses, okay? The irony! He couldn't keep from letting an amused laugh out. I promise you're not going to look stupid. He'll be fine, okay? This has come from Mr. Demon Eyes himself. She still looked very dissatisfied. Please take your glasses off. Jade. Come on, Jade. Before he even had time to gather what he was doing, he had gently placed his hands on both sides of her glasses, slowly slipping them off and setting them right next to his own. They were ushered into their seats by ride attendees trying to speed up the process of the last rides of the night and go home. As they waited to be buckled up, Jade couldn't help but smirk as she pondered. You know, back at the aquarium field trip, I had to persuade you to take off your glasses, and now you had to persuade me to take off mine. Oh, that's true. During the silence, he found himself racking his brain for something smart-sounding to say. He had to impress her, build up the moment. What would Rose say? What would Rose say? The construction of this ride is so avant-garde. he mused. It's not particularly Byzantine in terms of execution, is it? She just stared at him through confused, blurry eyes. Crap, he'd messed up, hadn't he? What he wouldn't have given for someone to swoop in and help him out. Everything he'd said tonight had felt like one big, uncomfortable disaster. Dave, Jade began gently, you don't usually talk like that. Well, I'll have you know I'm pretty well educated and... No, I'm not doubting your intellect. I don't think that's you at all. What's not me? Talking all this, yes, let's analyze the intense dichotomy between the amusement park demographics today, she explained in a silly, stuffy accent. I don't want to sound rude or anything, but I feel like the you when we went to the aquarium, I felt like that was the true you. He stared at her, speechless and bewildered. And, she continued, that was the you I really liked. Oh, I mean, the you I really liked to hang out with, and oh, gosh, that's not what I'm totally enjoying intellectual type you just. She quit rambling and exhaled, composing her words. Boy, I sure do a lot of rambling, don't I? She grinned sheepishly. What I mean is, I just want you to be the real you. That's the best you. She flashed the most heartwarming, genuine smile that it was as though she was ripping his heart right through his chest. The words had been stolen from him, his heart full and mind blank. He honestly couldn't think of a single thing to say back as he stared at her, feeling more vulnerable than he had ever felt in his entire life. No shades to mask his true visage, no stoic facade to shroud his feelings. They began to rise, up, and up, the bright lights of the park shining brilliantly in the dark. Even without her glasses, Jade could catch blurs of sparkling luminescence and gawked in its beauty. They continued rising, feeling like they would never reach the top. They were up so high, it felt like they would rocket right out of the atmosphere and reach space, hitting the stars on the way. Everything beneath them looked teeny tiny. Even the red miles looked like a little toy in stark contrast to the height. The chilly breeze caressed them as they flew in circles, a strange mixture of relaxation and enchantment. Pretty amazing, huh, cool kid? She flashed him another smile, and he melted. Yeah. Hey, you're not scared, are you? She giggled. It's okay if you are. Even the bravest of knights can get scared sometime. She laced her hand with his own, and his entire face turned the color of his eyes. This was his chance to tell her how long he'd pinned away for her, even when she didn't have the slightest idea of who he was. Becoming her rival had been the best thing to have happened. She had finally realized he existed, that there was a name to the face. Hey, Dave? Her expression moldered into a far more flustered one. I really like you, you know? Like, really like you. Right here, right now. This was his chance. He could not ask for a better moment. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He felt sick to his stomach, in pure ecstasy that she was even just holding his hand. Crap, he was so behind, wasn't he? This was probably easy for other kids his age. He'd never even had a girlfriend before, and it probably didn't help that the only coaching he'd ever received was either from his playboy brother or the biggest dork in town. Jade had felt so awkward, regretting saying what she had immediately after it had been met with that reaction. So he didn't feel the same way, did he? They had begun to go back down, which she was incredibly thankful for. She felt like a fool who had thrown her heart out there only to have it been thrown right back in her face. They reached the ground, Dave still dazed in his weird trance, Jade holding back waterworks. She snagged her glasses and slipped them on, exerting herself to a ridiculous level of peppiness to mask her actual heartbroken state. That was fun! Let's go find John and Rose, yeah? She walked in front of him, keeping a steady pace of, holy crap, I'm so embarrassed, stay away from me. Upon meeting up with their friends, Jade had practically jumped into Rose's arms. Hello, Jade. Whoa there. Ha! Good old Rose! So glad to see you! She buried herself into Rose's shoulder blades in the biggest bear hug ever. Jade? Rose hugged her back, inquiring with a whispering tone, Is everything all right? You're acting very peculiar. There wasn't any response. Oh, I get it. We'll talk about it later. John punched Dave in the arm. Hey, chicken! Heck, if he'd only known how much of a chicken he really had been. The ride home was brutally strange. Jade demanding shotgun with Rose and Dave sitting on pins and needles. The radio blared the entire time, the music helping her keep up with her charade. In the back seat, John had fallen asleep and was snoring. Haha, so much fun today! Okay, bye guys! When they had reached her house, she had jumped out with great vigor and practically ran for the door. Harley, wait, From behind the closed door, in the comfort and silence of her own home, the tears began to stream down her face.